Welcome to the channel. I am so thrilled to welcome back David Sharif, global autism advocate and motivational speaker. He's agreed to be back today. Hey, David.
Hello. It is so great to be back, and I am so honored to be on this great show once again.
Yes, I hope we can make a habit of it because it's so fun and so lovely to spend time with you. And I think that that does come through to the audience as well. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I think is really interesting and fascinating to me as a therapist anyway, but it's really your experience. It's kind of a first person perspective of being on the receiving end of therapies and how that support and that experience has shaped you to who you are today. So take it away, David. Where do you want to even start with this?
I have had multiple therapy sessions, and with very few that I could get into, I kind of laid out some of my favorites. I am going to kick it off with occupational therapy. And occupational therapy certainly meant to be one of my favorites. I felt comfortable either lying on my back or leaning on my stomach, swinging on a hammock, like back and forth, swinging on the swing. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's so sweet. I feel the swing in my body. I feel the swing coming in round and around. The next one is learning to ride a bike. At first, I started with a tricycle. That wasn't too hard. I could just ride a tricycle around in a circle. But then eventually, I had to ride a bike with two wheels. I started out with training wheels that were screw-drived to the back of the bike wheel. I did a bike ride, multiple bike rides in my neighborhood. And then soon, when I was starting to ride my bike to the park, I had to do it with just on two wheels. I was quite nervous, and I was poor when I started. It's okay. So I rode my bike with two wheels, but then as I got used to it, my parents let me do a bike ride around the house, not just the house, just around the neighborhood without crossing a single street, just one big circle to get my thighs in shape. Now learning to cut a paper with scissors, I think of this tool as the game rock, paper, scissors. You can't cut a rock with scissors. You can cut a paper with scissors, but a paper can cover the rock. You kind of will see what I mean. So if the paper can cover the rock, then the rock can crush the scissors. So that's how I think of learning to cut a paper with scissors. But when I cut the paper with scissors, my cutting was pretty crooked and not straight. And I have been told countless times, David, cut straight, not in a diagonal. Okay. But then it got easier. Learning to roll a ball. It can be a softball, it can be a hard ball. My therapist told me, roll a ball to the sticks. Or before that, roll a ball down the slide. So as I was rolling the ball towards the sticks, I'm like, okay, how many sticks can you knock down? Can it be 5? Can it be 10? And now I see it. That connects to bowling, one of my favorite games. Back then, I was challenged. how many sticks can you knock down? So that's kind of where it all started from there. And then learning to roll a ball. Drawing and painting, I loved art, and I love art any way, shape, or form. But then you have a very strong hand. Don't draw too fast. Stay in between the lines. That took a lot of training for me. And then on to tossing hoops. Can you throw this hoop in the basket, like basketball, a game that I did? Or not just tossing hoops in a basket, or maybe just tossing a ball into this box, like throwing a baseball pitch. Other than a ball, it's also hanging onto this thing that I can't remember. You can throw it like a frisbee, but then at the horse ranch, you toss it into one of the poles. I don't know why I can't remember the name of it, so audience, if you know what I'm thinking about or know what it actually is, please say in the comments. So all of the occupational therapy kind of led to my artistic styles and falling in love with athletics. Here we now go on to music. Playing piano. So if I ever had to play an instrument that I felt was best, it would have to be piano, taking piano lessons at the teacher's house or the teacher coming to my house to do piano lessons. I started off with easy songs, and then I went to harder ones. The keyboard notes were pretty easy to know, but now the challenge is, which part of the music are you going up or down in? And it's sometimes the rhythm of the song. One of my biggest challenges was the pedal, like the foot on the pedal, as to when do you put your foot on it, when do you take your foot off the pedal. And I enjoyed music and playing piano. Like I could name all the songs. Well, I'm not going to. I'm just going to mention what I actually did when I was playing piano and why it was essential to music therapy. Now on to dance classes. I took dance classes at a creative art school, or actually a school for young kids called Creative Kids. I took dance classes. I loved being on stage. I was not a good balancing dancer. I really did not like ballet or anything, but I very much enjoyed, dancing to a song. Depended on what I liked, what I didn't. But what did I really not like? I did not like doing splits. They were hurting my legs. I'm like, I could try my best to do one, but then I'm like, oh, this is the furthest I can go. And yikes, they were just painful. But when I go back to instruments, while I was playing only piano, like as a hobby for music, I was playing instruments at school. I could play a tambourine. I could play the shakers. I even enjoyed playing, what's another good one? Maybe the trumpet. Well, actually, not the trumpet, but potentially violin or ukulele. I did try a violin, and it was causing me neck pain, so I couldn't do that. I did try the guitar, and that reminds me of Guitar Hero, another video game that I always enjoyed. Pretty easy because it's like only 5 keys and it's not just a real guitar. Here is the biggest memory from schooling with the help group, the nonprofit where I fulfilled my general education. I sang in the school choir almost all of my years, from pre-K to my last year of middle school. The school choir has been one of the most biggest and greatest events provided for my school and from other schools affiliated with the help group, like Sherman Oaks in the Valley, but the school I went to is Village Glen West in Culver City. The school choir is like one of the biggest and most memorable times for music for those on the spectrum and for the parents, families, and friends to see their wonderful talents on stage. And that's really one of the greatest moments of music. Here we go on to drama. In drama, I enrolled in theater class called the Creative Kids Youth Theater Project. There were seasonal shows, like in the fall and winter, transitioning to the spring. I did a bit of summer acting, but then I got bored. I wanted to do other things. So on to the theater project, I did 15 productions. I had multiple roles, or mainly multiple in all of them, while I did have a big role. There were some roles I liked, some roles I didn't, mainly because of the character nature. Even though I prefer to play a role that has a good connection to who I am in reality, I persevered with playing roles that specifically do not meet who I am as a real person. Well, as I think about it, I think about how hard it is to plan the casting fairly for how every actor or actress will perform and do their best within the roles, and how grueling that process can be. But when I even think further, when I look at the roles and when I look at the script, either at theater class or in my bedroom, I start to realize, okay, how many roles do I have? And then I really think that, okay, I think I can manage this much. This is a fair amount. And it's just not too big for me that I have too much to memorize without the script in my hand. So after those 15 productions, or maybe in between, I performed in school talent shows. I chose to play a piano song. I chose to sing a song. And that was even another great memory of school in theater and arts on stage, where instead of just one big group singing together on stage, this is also a great opportunity for an individual student to represent their talents. And I really enjoyed it a lot because I got to choose what I liked and what I felt I could have fun with. Going back to summer camp at Camp JRF, now Camp Havaya, we have a weekly talent show where my cabin mates and I were planning the show. I played really good roles that I was skilled with. R2D2 in Star Wars, Scooby and Scooby-Doo. I had a lot of fun with them. Just learning to do beeps of a protocol droid and just learning to do a dog accent in television shows. I just mastered all of it. But then continuing in the same talent show, I did funny poetry readings because this is how I was growing and when I was starting to learn to read. And then I could also do a bit of trivia on what I have learned over the years. I could try and do other silly talks, but I'm not as talented as doing a burp talk like one of my other friends, but I do know how to talk silly. And that was one of the funniest and memorable moments in drama. There is definitely a lot in there, but I prefer to not get into because I have a lot more in this next one. Now it's cognitive therapy and behavioral therapy. Instead of them being separated, I decided to combine them. Cognitive therapy was mainly considered out of school, but it did happen in school as well. And the same thing went for behavioral. Kind of going into out of school, I was learning to play gambling games like blackjack. We play by the same rules. The cards are on the deck. We can sit on or get hit. We gamble with fake tokens or possibly starbursts in a cup. And then it's like whoever has the most cards will win that game. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because then it's like my therapist, his plan is to bankrupt me. And then, now and other than gambling games, we play this app on an iPhone. I'm not sure if it's out there, but I hope it is. It's called Quiz Up. Quiz Up is a quiz game app where you can choose a category of your choice. So many out there, don't have to name all. You'll just find out when you go on there. And you're challenged very well because in this quiz game called Quiz Up, you will be asked 7 questions. The last question is double the points, and you have to answer very fast. If you answer at the right second, like right when the question is there and the choices pop out, you earn 10 points. And it's very fun to play, and it can be found on the iPhone. Hopefully it's there. I don't know for sure. But the therapy that I received from those 2 experiences was mainly reverse psychology, where it's like I had to learn to adapt to and laugh to things that I generally don't like to be called, like, nah, you're just a sore loser because your team didn't win. I had to learn to play tricks. And then I'm like, how am I going to get this joke? Uh, okay. What is going to happen? How am I reacting to this change? Which actually leads to sarcasm. Sarcasm was essential, but not one of my favorites, because for my therapist, the therapist in school and out of school, their job was to do anything sarcastic, like make a sarcastic statement to try and get me to react. Part of it was training me on how to ignore the negativity from a bully, which I will get into later. But now, here we are with the sarcastic saying, Kobe Bryant stinks. And then I'm shouting, no, he doesn't. And it's like, I missed the sarcastic joke. I did not read the facial expression. I didn't realize that my therapist was smiling. He could say the same thing for something else that I loved. But the point of it was to actually read between the lines, which is not one of my strengths. And learning to actually read a facial expression that no one will say explicitly at times. So that was definitely one of my biggest challenges. But what was another thing that I enjoyed most from therapy sessions? Movie nights. Movie nights were some of the great events that I enjoyed when a weekend started. And this was the therapist out of school. The therapist looks at his DVD case of, Lord, over 1,600 DVDs. And I'm like, does he even have a target section of DVDs? And then it's like he looks at his DVD case, he prints out a flyer and says the movie we're going to watch and based on the theme. So one good example. So our movie night is a James Bond theme, and we are going to watch Skyfall. And that was pretty much a pretty popular movie night, to say the least. So movie night is about watching a movie, and then we chat for a bit and share our perceptions before we head home. And these were just extraordinary times for us to get together and even learn more. And yes, we did have pizza before the movie, so it was kind of a pizza party, but that is not the reason why I chose to go to movie night. Okay? So do not put that into your heads. Okay? All right. So movie nights were definitely some of the great ones. And they have a good connection because my mother's a film producer as well. But now back on topic. In therapy in school, we had group therapies, individual therapy. Sometimes we had therapy times with a friend. We even talked about stuff that, doesn't sound fun, like worldwide events that can sound brutal. Not going to get into one of them. But what was most important was learning to discuss what happens in the real world and how we can avoid those things and how it would help us and even benefit our self-esteem and confidence as we go through the unfairness that happens when life is so precious. But other than topics where we learn to get into that may not suit us, this was a great challenge for conversation practicing, and specifically to refrain from topics that only interest you. And similar to speech therapy, which plays a role in cognitive and behavioral, this was conversation practicing. There is a point chart on a piece of paper. Draw a line. On the top, it says, in the conversation, you're only focusing on yourself. In the bottom of the paper, it's saying you're focusing on others. Whether it was talking about the holiday season or travel plans or anything, we are being challenged to how often we are focusing on ourselves and how much we are actually asking questions and getting others involved in the conversation. So at the end of the conversation, the speech therapist looks at the sheet and introduces the progress. Excuse me. And then it's like, okay, you focused on yourself more than others, so you got to work on focusing more on others. And that was a very good way to start the task of conversation practicing. And what did I really like about it? There's this little toy microphone where you can speak into it. Like your voice echoes into the microphone, but it's not a real microphone. It's a fake toy microphone that can look like or sound like the real microphone, where it's your turn to speak, and then you're practicing how to make an announcement. So that's another good way to practice. Here is another game that I loved in group therapy, and I'll get into a good one through individual. Starting with group. Gaming. We could play games called Telestrations where we draw a picture based on the card or sheet we're given, kind of like Pictionary. And then you're drawing whatever is being told you to draw. And then we make these guesses, and then I'm like, okay, how does that fit to the drawing that this person drew? It's kind of like a guessing game, and I'm like, okay, this is not right. And then Pictionary was even greater and more challenging, and I enjoyed it, where I learned to draw a picture, and the purpose is you cannot use numbers or letters in the game. And then it's like you have to guess very quickly with the timer. And that was more of drawing. Now let's go back into some card games, shall we? Apples to Apples was a game to learn a new vocab word that was placed in the middle. And then I'm like, okay, I learned a new word. And I would just have to look at my cards and then see which card looks closer to that word, and then the judge would choose. Even though I did get irritated that my card was not chosen, the experience was, other than controlling my frustration, it's learning that new vocab word I can use in my language. Here we go into a common one that is individual and group. Uno. It can be regular Uno. I also played these new versions of Uno called Uno Attack and Uno Blast. And then it's kind of the same rule. You place the card down, and then I start to act like this when I hear this. And then my therapist says, Uno, you didn't say Uno. You didn't say Uno. And I'm like, ah, okay. I have to draw extra cards because I did not say Uno. Oh man, oh man. All right, so that was group games and individual. Back earlier in therapy sessions, Guess Who was the game where I had to guess a person. And that was good and challenging to learning to ask questions. Does your person have black hair? Does your person wear glasses? And then as I just keep pushing people down, I start to realize, could your person be James? I'm just making it up. It's random. So therefore, I'm like, I have to ask multiple questions to guess who that person is. And that's a good game. Here we go onto the one where it was fun, but then it's like, oh, it was so intense. Battleship. It's like you're commanding the ship. You have your own fleet, the opponent's fleet. You're trying to find a call where you say C3, miss. That's what the opponent said. You miss the ship. Your shot falls into the water. I could call E7, hit. You hit the ship. E6, hit the ship. And then once you hit the ship of your opponent will say, you sunk my aircraft carrier. And then I have more ships to sink. But then all of a sudden, one of my therapists, who I call the Battleship champion, or actually the unstoppable Battleship player, is like, for the final blow and for the final hit, C10, hit, you sunk my patrol boat. And then he asks me, would you like to know where my ships were? And I saw them like, how did I not guess those? Well, it's called learning from your mistakes. And I'm like, damn, you're too good at this. Why can I not beat you? Oh, help me. All right. So that was mainly gaming. And boy, boy, oh boy. And now cognitive and behavioral therapy continuing. Having learned to catch feelings, one of my biggest struggles was still not letting stuff haunt me. I'm going to do a bit of a flashback to the bullying perseverance interview. Following my acceptance into my dream school, Pace University, and Adelphi University, I was constantly berated by a classmate and other students about my post-high school plans following my acceptance and other successes that I'm about to gain. And I'm like, why is this happening? My hope was that after I get into the schools of my choice that this would not happen, but unfortunately it did. And anytime I wanted to mention my excitement about college or what was going through, I was constantly interrupted about my success. Like, why would I ever get a chance to share what I'm going through just because I am choosing to tackle a new highway that others are not? Because I know that my classmates are doing what's best. But going back to myself, this is about me. I sit with my therapist in the office and I'm like, I just feel like I'm sitting at the end of the wall, or I'm just sitting at the edge of a cliff on the train tracks. And I'm like, it just frustrates me that I am not getting a chance to share my story. I'm not getting a chance to share what I am going through with my post high school plans. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden, it was not just that. I was berated about jokes that I was playing with um, my longtime childhood friend, who I just talked travel with. We enjoyed playing movie jokes and quoting movies. And then we have been bossed around saying that we should not be doing this, apparently from my friend, who is so great because he never let it hurt him, even though he didn't like it. I had to learn to not let it hurt me. And then I just had to accept that this person is going to keep bossing me around until the end of high school or until graduation, where I will give my valedictorian speech. And by the time I depart, and then, okay. And then my therapist asks, why are you letting it bother you? And like, I'm not. It's just unacceptable. I've done my job. I accomplished what I wanted. I'm now on the last few steps. And then, okay, my therapist was right. I can't let it bother me. I hung on. I survived. So, it was great. But yeah, that was definitely a very challenging moment, even for having friends out of my home state, photos in my binder on my locker, and those other moments. So that was kind of a flashback to bullying perseverance and how it was essential to one of my therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm.
It was not just the berating. If I ever wanted to express my opinion on a movie, the bully just said one reason, and I never got a chance to say a sentence. And then when I had to step out of the hallway and I had to have a teacher stand next to me right after PE class, I'm like, why does this continue? And why won't they just accept the fact that what they say isn't true? And then my therapist shows up at the right time. And then I'm leaning my head on the fence. And this is the therapy session where, okay, I'm like shouting words out for the reason. And just, okay. And this is the answer. A bully would do anything to get you to react. In person, or if they try to steal or have your contact information from the old days, they would do the same thing. And that's what I have learned. There is no clear answer to it. And it leads me to something else I'm going to get into. The bullying perseverance has concluded on this part, but if I miss something and feel the need, I will go back. With unclear answers, this has led me to therapy sessions where I still struggled with catching phrases. Reading comprehension. Boy, I did not like reading comprehension at all. Oh, and believe me, it was the hardest. I will confess that. Going back again, following my acceptance into Pace University and Adelphi, both in New York, I applied to another one in New York called Hofstra. They required results from a long exam that I had to take. And my old therapist back from kindergarten or my childhood had to do something called somewhat like an IEP test, but it was mainly a test for my math skills and reading comprehension. It was long, it was brutal, it didn't happen all day, but it got boring in between here and there. I did have a lunch break. There was a lot to cover, and it showed. My reading comprehension was still not there yet. And this was a required exam, not just for a school I was applying to. Some of it was required for the comprehensive support programs that I would plan to enroll in if I were to choose to go to that school. And the comprehensive support program has to review the integrity of my progress and how far I am going. A lot of you may ask me, how is this relevant to your therapy sessions? Here is the answer. It has to do with the therapy I received and not having the ability to catch stuff that's not straightforward. That is a deep connection in between my therapy sessions and my struggles with examinations. Here is another satisfying moment in therapy sessions. Every therapist has done it for me in a very great way, and the best strategy that could proceed with, or that I could proceed with. A week or a day before the IEP, my therapist's job is to type out a document based on my progress and the individualized education plan based on the requirements of the departments, the school, and what I am going through and what my teacher has tested me. So during the individual therapy session, my therapist reads the document that he will read at the actual IEP meeting, and it will be a discussion as to, okay, what am I satisfied with in the document? What changes do I want to see or not? So that is the first part in IEP. That is another part in IEP preparation. Here we go into the real meeting. My therapist reads the document. Speech therapist, the administration, my homeroom teacher, and parents are at the meeting. We talk about the progress. Some of it is good, some of it is not. But I am still on top and I'm still on there. Some things that I have been missing. Learning to be a self-advocate, which took a great deal of work. Still mastering the conversation practicing, which was more than halfway there, but still not on top. Another major one that was discussed before entering secondary school, flexibility. What did I have to go through in flexibility? I was very centered, self-centered, and focused on my schooling progress. Even before having my driver's license, or even when I had it, I had to take a cab or a bus to school. I get overwhelmed when the cab or bus is late. And then I'm like, how am I going to get to school on time? How am I going to stay up to date with my credentials? And then it's like I have to do it without lashing out or getting irritated. And then it's like I arrive at school barely on time before first period, or mainly 5 or 10 minutes after, because this other student did not show up to the cab, and the cab is just sitting there as it should actually be moving as opposed to waiting, because if that other student is not showing up, then what's the purpose? But that was out of my control. What was in my control, in which I did master and was not hard, was even if I was late for school, which frustrated me, I kept on top of my work and I kept on top of everything else I was required to do. I was very serious about my performance. I had no fear whatsoever, and I never wasted a moment. So it was my flexibility was learning to tolerate lateness, even though I didn't like it. I'm a very punctual person, and I will show up on time and do my best. I have been late at times for good reasons, and flexibility has been important to my behavior and the behavioral therapy that I have received. It has even played a role in my travels, accepting train delays because of track maintenance, flight delays because of a foggy cockpit, um, observation on the wing of a plane being late, or maybe 2 or 3 planes have broken down. It shows that anything can happen, and that's where stress can kick in when I travel. And with all the independent traveling that I have done, I am still learning how to cope with the stress as it starts and kicks in. It's everyone in the traveling facility, not just one person. It is happening for a reason. And it's up to me on how to approach it. And I am confident, and in one of my APs, I have learned to be confident, and even in therapy, I have learned to be confident that regardless of what's happening for a reason, something will come back better, as opposed to just dwelling on, okay, what can happen even if there is no answer to it? How am I going to get through this? How am I going to get back to my destination safely? That's what it's all about. And that's what it was mainly all about, all in all, to every single one of the therapy sessions that I have mentioned, even back to the bullying perseverance that I did a flashback with. And more than that, the Bullying Perseverance podcast that I did very quickly, or actually recently, which was released in the beginning of October. Stress will happen for a reason. Things will happen for a reason. Whether it's a delay, a bully doing anything to get you to react, and then it's mainly those little things. I do feel that I have managed to catch the things that I did not mention before. And I am more than confident that I have given all of you a wonderful amount of information on my therapeutic strategies. It might have been too long, might have not been concise enough, but I hope that whatever I provided you has given you some inspiration about the kind of therapy that you can give to the autistic individual, and that you can think what is best for the autistic individual to be supported.
That's so awesome, David. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. You know, what I heard too is that all of the therapies that you received provided experiences that were kind of structured and organized, that you enjoyed and had fun with, that encouraged you to be your best, and in many ways has kept you very optimistic about your life as an adult. Would you say that that is an okay summary? Just some of those characteristics. Does that resonate with you?
Can we go a little bit backwards with it
Yeah.
on what you were explaining?
Yeah. I just kind of noticed a pattern from all of your therapies that you received, that the structure and the opportunities and the experiences that it provided you helped you build these skills that you were talking about today, that have translated into your optimism, that have translated into your love of athletics, that have translated into your ability to travel independently. Would you say that your experiences in therapy has led to some of these things?
You have said it all right there. Yes, it has. It can lead me to other things that I may enjoy, I may not, but no matter what, it is going to be there for me. The purpose of a therapist is to be there for you, to help you get over the stress and to let the stress flow away, to remain confident in yourselves, regardless of the unfortunate and the inevitability that comes when it comes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. If you could, David, as we end this interview or this conversation, if you could give the therapists out there or the professionals or teachers, whoever's in this position of supporting individuals on the spectrum, what would be some of your advice to us?
That's always the number one question I'd ever get at the end of an interview. And that will forever and always, or maybe like that, be the great question anyone would ask an interviewee. If your strategies of supporting the autistic student are working, keep up with it. If not, go back to the other strategies you have developed for other students you're supporting. Kind of think about that. See if there is a connection in between it. Depending on the kind of therapist you are, if there are certain exams you have taken before, and if you are able to look at the credentials you are maintaining, they could become a helpful resource for you. Or maybe do a bit of a flashback on potentially other therapies you have received, or even your colleagues you have connected with, and learning about the therapeutic strategies they are doing, even if they may be different from yours. Moving on to so that's the professionals. Moving on to the parents and the families. This is the hardest thing that there is no clear answer to. And the time length is unclear as well. Give yourself time to find the best therapist and best supporter. Observe very closely the progress of your child. Have a discussion with the therapist one-on-one about how did it go? What went well? What didn't go well? Like, type it on a Word document or write it down. The highs and lows, the ups and downs. That should help you determine, is this the right therapist for your child? Yes or no? That would give you the answer to it. And it can require multiple therapists, but that is my best strategy. If I were a parent of an autistic child, that's how I would do it. Now, onto the autistic individual. Take the challenges that your therapist is giving you. Listen very carefully. Do what you can to not feel so stressed. The therapist is there to help you shake off the trauma that's happening, or that could be haunting you or letting it bother you. They are there to support you. They would love to play games with you, and you would love to play games with them. It is the perfect stress relief. It is the way to relieve the pressure that you are going through and that your therapist is going through. The therapist would love to entertain you, but they would also love to teach you things that you may not feel accustomed to. But take it. Don't refuse it. Utilize that. It's a window of opportunity for you to learn what can happen and how can you avoid it. If a therapist just uttered or continued on the same thing, or did not jump into the differences or the struggles, then the therapist always told me that I'm not doing my job. And I'm like, okay, I have to be aware of that. All of my therapists have thrived and would do everything to do their job. And all of my therapists never shied away from anything. Here is a big one. Being a global autism self-advocate. My dream, my career is to be a global motivational speaker, giving talks about autism at many special needs school or any school to support autistic students, many schools from all over the world. If you are seeking any autistic advocate or an autistic individual to provide some guidance for your school, please reach out to me. I am here. I have good public speaking skills, and I love speaking on stage thanks to all that I've been through. And I am there because I have speeches and talks that I want to give. If you want someone to come in as a guest speaker or need a speaking inquiry or are trying to, please reach me. I would be honored to speak at your school, and I would do it any way, shape, or form. But don't just rely on me. I have many friends on the autism spectrum who are self-advocates. They want to do the same thing. Their knowledge is different from mine. And if you're seeking someone based on the kind of knowledge that you're trying to get, reach out to that person and not just me. I don't know every single thing. Every autistic person is different. And I know for a fact there are many autism advocates who want to go to your school or your business and speak. Reach out to those people as well. My friends who I have connected with during COVID, or some people that I may not know and that I should hopefully get in contact or meet in person someday. And I know that I will make it happen because I stick to what I can do. So please reach out to me and other autism self-advocates. We want to speak in your business. We want to give you information we have. If you need more knowledge, reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David, for sharing your experience and your time and your passion for this. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And I promise that I can't promise it, but I know it will happen. One day we will meet in person.
Yes, I hope so. I'm going to hold you to that promise. We're going to make it happen, okay?
Yes,
All right. Thanks,
we will.
David.
Of course.